This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so welcome everyone. This is our second webinar for the OASIS working group, the Observing Air-Sea Interaction Strategy. And as you know, OASIS has 5 theme teams that we're about to get started with, and one of them is on capacity and partnership building. And so we're super happy to be able to have Brian Arbic and Ebenezer Nyadjro. Oh, Ebenezer, I've known you so long, and yet I'm so bad with names. Can you tell us exactly how to pronounce your last name?
Yeah, it's okay. Nyadjro.
Nyadjro.
Nyadjro. Yeah, thanks.
So Brian Arbic is a professor of Earth and Environmental Sciences at University of Michigan. He's a physical oceanographer with expertise in tides, internal gravity waves, mesoscale eddies, and the role of ocean in weather and climate. As a former Peace Corps volunteer, Brian later reconnected with friends in Ghana to found the Coastal Ocean Environmental Summer School, which has been running in Ghana for 1 week every year since 2015. He also recently founded the Ocean Corps, which is now an endorsed UN Ocean Decade program. And then Ebenezer Nyadjro will also be speaking today. And Ebenezer is a physical and satellite oceanographer. He graduated with a BS, Bachelor's of Science in Oceanography and Fisheries from the University of Ghana, and has a MS in Marine Sciences from University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and a PhD in Physical Satellite Oceanography from University of South Carolina. He previously worked at NOAA PMEL in Seattle, where I first met him, and is now at U.S. Naval Research Lab in Stennis Space Center, and is also at Mississippi State University. Ebenezer's research focuses on microplastics, ocean currents, and salinity and air-sea interaction. He has actively participated in the Coastal Ocean Environmental Summer School in Ghana since it started in 2015. So super excited to hear about this work. I guess, Brian, you're going to start first, and then we'll have about 30 minutes of presentation and then 30 minutes of discussion. Okay, take it away.
Thanks so much for having us here. I think this is maybe the first time we've given a talk like this since the official endorsement. Now the title has changed to be not just about the Ghana School, but about the larger concept of Ocean Corps, which we will get to. This is we're starting with the Ghana School. You know, here's where Ghana is. Most of you probably know that. We run this school in the capital city of Accra. These are websites for the Ghana School, Coastal Ocean Environment Summer School in Ghana, and the Ocean Corps concept. Many people have been participated in this. Ebenezer has been there since the beginning. In fact, I work a lot with the Navy, and in 2015, I was visiting Naval Research Lab collaborators for other reasons, you know, our Navy modeling stuff. And I saw Ebenezer. I said, "Hey, aren't you from Ghana?" And so he joined us right there on the spot, and that was a really good thing. So this is a picture of our group on the beach in Ghana in 2018. So what led us to this point, and what can be learned from that journey about how to expand such efforts? So I apologize for this for people who don't like this kind of thing, but I'm going to give a little bit of personal history, and the reason is I got entrained in this work because of Peace Corps. And I think that sets a really good example for how to entrain much larger numbers of people into this kind of work. So for me, my connections to Africa started before I was born because that's where my parents met. So this is my father, who taught secondary school in Nigeria. My mother was working for a famous religious scholar And they were introduced, here they are here many, many years ago. They were introduced by a mutual friend who was a Peace Corps volunteer. They actually weren't in the Peace Corps, but they met because of Peace Corps, their mutual friend. And so stories about Nigeria were part of our family lore, but I grew up in Michigan. Again, this part may seem irrelevant, but it's just to kind of emphasize that I grew up in a place really different from Africa. So I grew up in the cold part of Michigan on the Canadian border, Sault Ste. Marie, there it is. This is a typical view from my parents' deck, in a typical winter. And then I went to University of Michigan as an undergrad, which is the tropical part of Michigan. And now I'm back there as a professor. More on that in a second. After my graduation, I joined the Peace Corps. Some of you may know that Kennedy announced the idea of the US Peace Corps on the steps of the University of Michigan Student Union during a campaign stop in 1960. So they celebrated the 50th anniversary of that. It just so happens exactly in the first year where I was back in Michigan now as a faculty, just by nice coincidence. My first Peace Corps posting in Liberia was cut short due to a brutal civil war. That's a whole story in itself. And I was reposted to Ghana, where I taught physics and math at a secondary school. Just for humorous aside, there were many challenges. For instance, it's a little bit hard to teach electricity and magnetism when you don't have regular electricity. But again, that's another story. Here's the students that I knew the best out of the hundreds that I taught. So this is a Form 5 science class in northern Ghana, 1992. There I am. And the arrows point to a few of the students that I either knew best, this gentleman here, or that were among the tops. There were good students throughout the class, but the very best two students were probably these two, Adam and Joseph. One thing I'll note, because we're talking about capacity development, you will notice this picture. This is a science class from 30 years ago in northern Ghana, no females. The science class the year after that, only one female. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure they're doing better on that score now. So the Peace Corps provided infrastructure so that someone like me, a recent college graduate who wanted to go to Africa, was able to do it. It was a huge adventure. I got amoebic dysentery and a few other interesting things happened. But if I'd had to go on my own without the structure of the Peace Corps, I probably wouldn't have been able to pull it off. So that's why I'm showing these slides, that having infrastructure enabled me to go off to Africa. As I marched through my post-Peace Corps life, eventually landing in Michigan, I lost touch with these students for 16 years, and then they started writing me, telling me what they were doing, and I wondered, what about Joseph Ansang, who was one of the top students? I found out through a few email exchanges, these ones right here, that he was actually doing a PhD with Bruce Sutherland, whom I know very well, at the University of Alberta, studying internal waves. So after 16 years of no contact, it turned out that he was not only getting a PhD, but it was in a fairly similar field. So I brought him for that 50th anniversary Peace Corps celebration. This is in front of my house in Ann Arbor. And I decided to hire him into my group, and my African-American partner, Jennifer, had something to do with that. She said, why don't you hire him? And I was kind of leaning that way anyway, and that convinced me. So the press did a little bit of story about how 16 years of no contact, and then he was working in my lab. There he is in the lab in 2016. He was there for 6 years. Here's pictures of Paige and Anna, who've also been involved in the Ghana school. Joseph is now back at the University of Ghana as a lecturer. We still work together on this school and on science research projects. And having him in my lab made me realize I really wanted to go back to Ghana. So we founded this coastal school as an outreach project for a career grant. We took a scouting trip to Ghana in 2014. And by the way, that was sort of a nerve-wracking time to travel to West Africa because it was right at the peak of the Ebola epidemic, which did strike countries on either side of Ghana, but never, fortunately, Ghana itself. But I was quite stressed out about that. That's kind of an irrelevant aside, but other than that, the trip went well. And the other big change I noticed is the ubiquity of cell phones. Just to show the impact of programs like Peace Corps, I then found out that one of the other top students in the class, who was pointed out by one of those arrows, was actually a member of Ghana's parliament representing the district where we all met years ago. Okay, so with that as an intro, now the school itself. So starting in 2015, after we had that scouting trip, kind of lay of the land, then we started doing the summer schools. And the first one was at Regional Maritime University, which trains people for careers in the maritime industry, as you would guess, ships, shipping, ports, etc. It was the first time we did it. We really were kind of just fly by, seat of your pants operation. We only did lectures. That's Ebenezer right there lecturing that very first year, and he's been there ever since. We only had 4 lectures, me, Ebenezer, Joseph, and Wynn Johnson, who's here. And the number of African participants was also relatively small. And then since then, we've alternated between Regional Maritime University and University of Ghana, which has a ocean sciences department. And since then, it has been larger. So kind of weirdly, the NSF grant, I didn't ask for enough money, so it actually was kind of a seed grant. And the expansion the second year was actually due to money from my own university. It usually works the other way around, but for a couple of years, this school was mostly funded by my own university. And of course, since then, I had to go back to NSF for once I knew, I actually need to ask for more money than I did. But anyway, with all those extra people, you can see now we had much larger groups of Americans and Africans. We just more energy, more ideas. Let's do more things. So let's do trips to the beach. Let's have labs and things like that. In 2017, the innovation was let's have a trip on a boat. They deployed a drifter, and practically all of the African participants got seasick. In 2018, the new thing we thought of was to have projects. In 1 week, of course, there's a limit to how much you can do, but you can do something. And so that some of you may know Christian Buckingham, and that's Ngozi that he's working with, Ogugua. So the people formed in small groups and did projects. And then the year after that, many of these projects were presented to the whole group. And for many of the African participants, this is the first time they had done something like that. So that was our last in-person school. I'll get to what we've done since, COVID in a minute. But the African participants, those first 5 years of in-person schools, they range from undergrads to faculty, government, private sectors workers, most from Ghana. But as time marched on, we got more and more from Nigeria, as well as other West African countries. The Ghanaian instructors and co-organizers are shown here from the 2 different institutions, Regional Maritime University, University of Ghana. Red means that they participated more than once. So lots of return participation amongst the organizers. From the global north, which means, the US and Europe for now, again, a range of participants, faculty, research scientists, postdocs, grad students, undergrads. Red again means more than once. Some people switched jobs. In fact, Madeline Foster Martinez twice. She started as a grad student at Berkeley and then became a postdoc at Louisiana State and then a postdoc at UNO. Now she's a faculty at UNO. So actually she's gone through 3 job changes, but she's still with us as a member of all this. So I'm grateful for all that. Now, of course, after COVID hit, we had to go virtual. So, we used YouTube to post lecture videos and our own website and Slack in 2020 and 2021. We held workshops on ocean acidification. One of Megan's PMEL colleagues, Sophie Chu, was one of the leaders of that. We had panel discussions on women in STEM career pathways. George Philander joined us to talk about his African perspective on global warming. And we had about 200 people joining the Slack workspace, but about maybe 70 who were really actively participating. Once you go virtual, you'll go beyond Africa. We started getting people from India, Malaysia, and elsewhere. Now, one thing about going global is that you can get a lot more people involved from the US and Europe as well, because it's easier to join a few Zoom calls than to travel. So we had all these new people. Other benefits, more international participation, people from East Africa, several Kenyans, and again, Indians and a few Malaysians. Bank of lectures on YouTube. Some of the challenges, the internet is unreliable, so that is a big challenge. And for some people, these new tools like Slack and Zoom, they're not used to it, but you can really see that on the African side, people were more familiar with using Zoom in 2021 than they were in 2020, so just like the rest of the world. So we held a virtual school as well in August 2021, and in between we held kind of a mini school in January with a slightly more limited format. So we cover many subjects. I won't read them off, but most subjects in oceanography and some other environmental fields. Sorry that I'm going fast. It's just kind of my style of talks to just like blaze through an overview. So the funding thus far, I mentioned NSF, various Michigan sources. We've gotten some funding from this wonderful facility in Italy. Some of you probably heard about. That's a great place, and various Ghanaian sources. And then thinking towards the future for funding, we have NSF funding that will cover one more in-person Ghana summer school, hopefully next year. It all depends on how COVID goes. Some of you may read about, vaccinations in Africa. It is stepping up, thankfully. We have a couple NSF proposals. Charles Achoku from Howard led this proposal to set up weather stations in West Africa and improve weather and climate prediction in West Africa and the eastern US. The idea being that hurricanes start in the waters off West Africa, then come to the eastern US. So there's a scientific connection, and then the capacity development theme was that you'd be training Africans as well as people in minority serving institutions in the US. And our school will be used as a platform for meetings. That proposal was actually turned down, but that often happens with NSF, and hopefully we'll learn from the reviews and submit again. And there's another proposal led by Michigan and Lamont to add sediment coring and paleoceanography to the school, which would be a big step in terms of increasing the curriculum. So why should we do all this? The percent of people in the world that are Africans, about 15%. And if you add in the diaspora in the Caribbean and the US, it's up to 18%. And you probably all know this, but population growth is greatest in Africa. So the number of new people in the world, if you want to put it that way, that are African over the next 30 years is going to be really large. I forget the exact percentage, but I think it's like 50% of the population growth is going to be in Africa, something like that. So it's a really, really important place to think about global issues, including scientific issues. But the percent of scientists in the world that are African or diaspora is way less than 15 or 18%, as you can just easily see by going to any big science meeting. And so there's a representation issue, but as well, oceanography is an inherently global science. We need African partners to observe and model the oceans around Africa. You could think about EEZ issues. If you want to go into an EEZ, you have to get the permission of the local government, which you're a lot more likely to get if you have local partners. Also, global warming and other global problems, they're just not going to be solved unless you have the participation of Africa, the world's fastest growing continent. So we have some success stories. We have a testimonials page, mostly from our in-person schools. Here's one from Nefertiti Smith, who has participated twice as an undergrad from Hampton University, which is a historically black college and university in the US. And she's also participated as a PhD student. She's now in the California system. Just to read this highlighted part, she said, people of color need to be represented in the scientific community. Global issues require people around the world to work together, and I learned that this is possible from this program. And here is a testimonial from a Nigerian participant, Ogunsola. who says it was a turning point to work in those the project track where they do research projects, and really enjoyed that group. And Maddie Foster Martinez, who led it and made a presentation, benefited immensely. And some other success stories really quick. So for me, one of the biggest ones is that we get returnees. So a lot of Africans participate multiple years, and a lot of the people from the global north also do the same. So I guess we're doing something right. And what I find particularly gratifying is that many of the early career participants from the US have taken charge of this. So the reason I had time to come up with the proposal for Ocean Corps was because the Ghana school was mostly run by other people. I could, trust them to run it and worry about going bigger. And so like basically they're running the school now, not me. And it's young people doing that. Jennifer Moskal wrote a master's thesis on the impacts of the school on people on both sides of the ocean, and that is now published in a social science journal. As an experiment, I supported University of Ghana grad student. I think this is something our community could think about. You could have a talented young African and bring them to the US, and it would cost the better part of $100,000 a year for them to be a grad student. If they get their PhD in Ghana instead, it costs about $8,000. And if you have external collaborators, such as myself and many of you know Dimitri Menemenlis. So Dimitri and I are collaborating with Joseph and Patrick. So I didn't mention, Patrick is a student of Joseph Ansong, the gentleman who was my student years ago, and then my postdoc, and he's back in Ghana, and I support his first grad student. So I think this is a model people could think of. Some people would call this a sandwich degree, where you're getting your degree in Africa, but spending significant time in the US. Another success story is hydrography. So what I mean by that is that, if you think about this value chain, if your economies are growing rapidly, which is the case in Africa, you need ships to bring goods in. That means you need charts for them to navigate their way safely into ports. That means you need hydrographers. There is only one hydrography program in Africa. I think that's true. Well, anyway, there's not very many anyway. And one of them is at one of the universities that we work with. So they said, please bring us a hydrographer to try to develop a real program. And so I did. So Stephen Howden, who's one of our regulars, he's working. It's taking a while, but they're getting there, trying to develop a hydrography program. And he trained a retired U.S. Navy captain, this gentleman here named Brian as well, Brian Connon. And then another success story. I never thought this would be a big part of an oceanography school, but computer programming. So my own student, Paige Martin, deserves most of the credit for this. I deserve no credit other than just I was smart enough to bring her there. And she looked at things and she said, well, you're using MATLAB in the school. That's what we did in the early years. But the thing about MATLAB is you have to pay license fees. So if the participants learn a little MATLAB, then they go away, they can't use it anymore because they can't afford it. So why don't you teach them Python, which is a language that they can use because it's free. So that was her innovation, and it was really a good one. So our Python workshops are now very popular. And just to give one success story from that. So this gentleman named Mumin Oladipo is a Nigerian who studies the atmosphere, not the ocean, but good enough. And there's my Paige, my former student, who's now a postdoc at Lamont with Ryan Abernathy. And what all this wording here is basically saying that once Mumin learned Python, he used it to program a Raspberry Pi, which allowed him to run his instrumentation at far lower power cost, which basically enabled him to take data for his thesis. So that's a wonderful story. Last success story. Here's one of our regular participants, Richmond Kennedy Kwarku, and he is leading cleanups of plastic trash on the beaches of Ghana, which is a massive societal problem. You could get a sense of how bad it is from this picture here. So wrapping up and getting into Ocean Corps, just a few more slides. So many people have worked to make this school possible. And many of the people coming from the US and Europe, the global north, had never been to Africa before participating in our school. They came because they were interested and because we already had a school infrastructure in place. That made things relatively easy for them. And there I'm bringing back the analogy to the Peace Corps. You know, you build something, a structure, and people will come. So we've given seminars like this to many institutions, and many people are interested in joining, especially young people. You need to get funding if you really want to expand the idea. So I'm suggesting a unifying concept of an ocean corps. And it's kind of like a Peace Corps for ocean science is our thought. If we could find funding, maybe you could basically use the example of what we're doing in Ghana and do it in, you know, I'm just making numbers up, 9 other places. And then you have like an ocean corps. You have a distributed bunch of summer schools that could work together on global data sets like OASIS, you know. You could sort of, you have the schools and you have the data from OASIS and they work together on all of it, that kind of thing, not just OASIS, but that sort of thing. And even bigger than that is a STEM Corps idea, like a Peace Corps for all of science. And I'm in weekly meetings of this with a former NSF deputy director. We're actually trying to push this at like congressional levels. So Ocean Corps is recently endorsed by the UN Decade, and we tied it to COASS, Predict, OASIS, and others. Closely allied with EQUISY, the Ocean Science Fund for All, which is about funding. Like I just said a minute ago, the STEM Corps idea, even bigger, like, you know, all of science working at high levels with, you know, National Academy and NSF deputy directors on that. And personally, I've learned over time that if you pitch these things, you know, to also serve groups that are underrepresented in the US, I think certainly US funders will be more interested. So we're working with historically Black colleges and universities as well. And last slide, you know, why would you want to have these core-like ideas? Like, people are busy. So like if someone is a champion and forms a school, other people will join. It internationalizes people, diversifies the global STEM community, and develops real collaborations between US and the global South. Now, Ebenezer is much more efficient than I am at talking, so his presentation is much shorter.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And then, as Brian mentioned, COESSING was formed as part of building capacity in West Africa, and then we've had people from other places also. So for a program like OASIS to be successful, it will need collaborators in every part of the world because the ocean goes beyond just the Americas or Europe. So we'll need to have people in West Africa who help programs like OASIS and others. And to be able for them to help, they need to know what they are doing, they need to understand the processes, and they need to be trained. And also to be able to go to people's waters and sample in their EEZ, you need to build strong collaborations with them. And to build that, these are some of the people that will be in positions where you are going to need their help to get the permissions and all the efforts going to collect data and to make it available to the entire oceanographic community. So as part of the COESSING program, we have a component on satellite oceanography, which we train participants in and tell them how to get data and then use it. Next slide, please. So West Africa is made up of about 16 countries, and of these, almost all of them are bordered by the ocean, except Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. So population of about 400 million, and about 51% of them live by the coast. And it provides a source of income to a lot of the people as well. And with this also comes a lot of challenges. Next slide, please. The challenges include environmental pollution from activities such as oil drilling, as we see in the middle picture in Nigeria. On the top right, we're looking at Sierra Leone, a beach there where people tend to go a lot because it's very clean and nice. And on the bottom left is in my own home country, Ghana. And this picture was taken when I was a student in 2005 as part of a program in training or getting hands-on experience. We went to the westernmost part of Ghana to educate the fisher folks, to collect water on water quality, to collect data on water quality, and to do some analysis and see what is going on. And on the bottom right is pirate activity in West Africa. And if we follow the news, we'll know that this activity is highest there in the world. It has moved from the Indian Ocean because there's a lot of security updates, but it's now prominent in West Africa. So there's need to understand all these environmental situations as well as security situations. And to do that, you need data-driven decision making. And to do that also, you need a personnel who will be able to take the data, analyze it, and be able to tell what is going on and educate the politicians who make the policies, etc. Next slide, please. So what we do to do this, to enhance the capacity of the indigents there, we want to make sure that they understand what is going on. They are able to join the rest of the world in doing data-driven research. They're able to participate in research activities such as AGU, ocean sciences, and other meetings, because when you go to such meetings, you have very low representation with people from Africa. And with me personally coming from there, education system is said that you know a lot of the theory, but you don't have a lot of hands-on experience. So we need to train these participants for them to be able to get data, use them, and then go beyond just the theoretical knowledge, but be able to apply it. And of course, we want to see a lot of peer-reviewed publications from that part of the world as well. So these were our objectives when we set out to do these practical trainings as part of COESSING. Next slide, please. So these are just some examples of environmental activities that go on in West Africa that needs to be studied. So on the top left, we're looking at algal bloom, where we have a lot of nutrient enrichment in the coastal waters, which tends to enhance primary productivity. On the top right is a thermal plant in the western coast of Ghana in Takoradi, where they produce electricity, and the effluent from these plants are flushed out into the ocean. These have a lot of environmental consequences. Early part of this year, in March or April, there were a number of fish kills in this part of Ghana, and it led the scientists to try and look for answers to this. And when preliminary data we saw from satellite temperature images showed that the water temperature rose above what usually happens, and that led to shocks and fish kills. And on the bottom pictures, we see mining activities. These are indigenous mining in the local water bodies. And these waters also serve as drinking waters for the indigenous, most of whom do not have access to pipe-borne waters like we have here on the Western world. Next slide, please. So for them to be able to understand this, I mean, homegrown problems, homegrown solutions, that is what drives us to do these things. So we train them and to get data, and to do this in the mornings doing coercing, we take them through the theoretical aspect of what they're learning. We teach them the basics of satellite oceanography. We teach them the physics of it, how they can get data and how they can process it. We take them out to the field, as we see in the bottom right, where we launch some equipment out into the ocean. It collects data and it sends it via satellite to the campuses where we run in the school. And then later in the afternoon, next slide, please, we use these data and others to be able to do hands-on experiences. And beyond that, also, we teach them how they can go to web pages to download data. And the reason why we emphasize on satellite data is that most satellite data are freely available, and it provides extensive coverage of the ocean, repetitive measurements, so you can look at time series. If you want to go out to the ocean, you're looking about 20 to 50,000 per day, depending on the size of the vessel you're going with, the crew, and then the equipment that you're taking out. And this is beyond the expense of most scientists or researchers or even governments in West Africa. So if we encourage them to use satellite data, which is freely available, they may be able to do a lot more analysis than they were in the past. So the emphasis is on free, and that is what we try to encourage them to do, which because a lot of them do not have money to purchase data or to go out to sea. Next slide, please. And as Brian mentioned, they also, once they get this data, they need to be able to analyze this data and be able to interpret it, and then use that also to inform decision-making with regards to environmental protection and management. And MATLAB, for example, is a very popular software, but it's quite expensive for Africans. A student license, for example, is $99, which is beyond a lot of them. So we emphasize on Python, which is freely available. And as part of COESSING, we train participants on how to use Python software to be able to process large data sets to make publication quality images that they can submit to journal articles. Next slide, please. So this is just one of the exercises that we take them through, and we use their own situations that is happening there. So this is the upwelling phenomenon which happens in West Africa. So you have winds during the summer, they move the waters off the coast, and you have a well that that builds, and the cold, nutrient-rich waters come from the bottom of the ocean to the surface, and this enhances primary productivity. So in the figure on the right, January is showing during the winter month when you have warmer waters, and then August is showing when you have cooler waters. And if you take a box in the region in West Africa, you get a time series plot which clearly shows that during the summer, they have strong upwelling and cooler waters. So when we do things like this, they really appreciate it because one, they always feel cooler. Those who live by the coast feel cooler during the summer months, and they didn't really understand why. But now they decided that they're able to explain by themselves and also to others. So they're able to use Python to download data, to process data and make images by themselves, which makes them excited. And they're able to take this knowledge with them towards completing their dissertation. And those who are early careers also are able to enhance their productivity. Because beyond the summer school, we keep in touch with the participants where we help them to get data for their dissertation, to get data for their own research work they are doing. And for the participants that come from government agencies, they're also able to get data that allow them to do some analysis, which help them to make informed data-driven decisions. So this is but a few of the things that we do doing COESSING, mainly enhancing the capacity of the indigents through the way they can access freely available data and to build their capacity. And this, we think, make them ready to be part of global efforts such as OASIS, which aims at creating or getting more data for the scientific and oceanographic community. Thanks for your attention. I will be ready to take your questions.
Fantastic. Super interesting. I just hearing you talk about all these challenges, it really does strike me as so important that OASIS consider these challenges as we develop our, best practices and our products and our curriculum. And, almost every theme team, it seems, really needs to consider these perspectives. So thanks you so much for doing that, giving this talk. Krista, you've been chatting online. I know you have a question, so I'll let you ask your question.
Well, I would like to let the person in the chat ask the first question, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're welcome to unmute yourself, Hassan, if you would like to directly ask a question. If not, I can read it. Okay.
No,
so
I'm happy to ask the question. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Nyadjro. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very good. I'm familiar with that region very well, and I've been working a little bit with the MESA program. I don't know if you heard about such program within the University of Ghana. And they have a thematic specifically for the marine. And they've been collecting a lot of data and working with the fishermen there, building all the applications for them for safety reason, for finding fish, all the things. I just was asking because I didn't see in any slide or your presentation, Brian, talking about the MESA program and that synergy between the two programs, whatever happened. I know that the ECOWAS or MESA program is funded by Europeans, and I know you've been funding something from US. So how these two programs are working together within the same university?
So I'll let Ebenezer say more,
Yeah, thanks, Hassan. That's a very good question. And I'm very familiar with the MESA program. In fact, it is based in the University of Ghana where I went. And the director of the MESA program, that's Professor Hydrography, was my undergraduate advisor when I was a student there. And the other people, Kwame and Bennett, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I know all of them. And we collaborate. And as I speak, we have a couple of papers that is coming from the MESA program where there was one that was accepted recently by Remote Sensing in Earth Systems Science, which is a journal I edit. Then we talked about how they are using remote sensing data to educate the fisher folks, as you rightly mentioned. So COESSING does not have like a standing memorandum of understanding with MESA per se, but we do, when we go, we've met with them, Brian and myself and others have met with them and directors of MESA. We've invited them to our program, and we've had some of them participating in doing the COESSING and actually give talks. We have Professor Angela Hulu, who is a fishery scientist at the University of Ghana and also affiliated with MESA, who gave a talk every year, I think, gives talks during our program. So yeah, the students are also encouraged to come from that program. So we're doing similar things, and they're also using the satellite data, and they send participants our way. So we collaborate with them, and we very much in touch with them, plus other programs that are going on. We have collaborators in Liberia, for example. One of a former student in Brian's University is a professor there. We keep in touch with them, as well as many others from Nigeria. Professors and early career scientists, they come to COESSING, and we collaborate with all of them. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think the only thing that I did, well, I remember that they had some challenge with sharing the data, basically, accessing data from different sources. And then they implemented EarthDAP. I don't know if you're familiar with that system, but I think it was very successful for them to develop on top of that applications for the fishermen. I mean, really, they are doing something that have an impact on societal benefits. And that's something interesting, for me. It was very interesting for me because they are really serving a community of fishermen and for safety reasons and for, other reasons that you know of. So it's very good that you guys have already a good connections with them. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very good. You mentioned that, Hassan, because as part of OASIS and also other programs, we're looking to broaden data collection. And as part of MESA, one of the things that they're doing is to build low cost technologies. So for example, I know Professor Yafi and some of the folks at the MESA program are working on how they can use Raspberry Pi to design some equipment where they put a couple of them at the ports and others to collect Earth interaction data. So like winds, temperature, and stuff like that. So it's quite elementary, but it's a good effort, and they've shown very promising results. And with funding, I believe, and programs such as OASIS, they'll be able to expand these efforts, which will increase the volume of data that we are getting from areas like West Africa and other regions where sampling is very low. And we need the data from those places to be able to understand the global Earth system. Thanks.
I was just going to say really quickly that we have 3 or 4 faculty from the University of Ghana that we work with really closely on the school, and it was on one of my slides. I went through it pretty quickly. But we do have the connection with George, as Ebenezer described.
So I see there's another question in the chat. You're welcome to ask directly if you're interested in doing that.
Okay, yeah. So it's Vivian. I'm from Hawaii, and I would like to know what's the biggest challenge you face to get off it in the first place. I'm asking that because I put that in my proposal. The project was funded to have summer school in Madagascar, but I have no idea how I'm going to get that from like it. So what was your challenge? How was this beginning?
Yeah, we should talk more. I'm actually aware of your Madagascar efforts, so we should talk more in detail later. But in short, you have the funding. That's one of the hardest parts, is getting the funding to begin with. As I said, in my case, I didn't ask for enough money, so I hope you asked for more money.
I hope. I don't know. I was just thinking that I have never done that. So just wait.
Yeah, you'll find out. I mean, I asked for $30,000 US for 4 years, and that's 7,000 a year. And I was just naive. I mean, I had this idea that I would go with Joseph, the person, that you saw in the thing, and maybe a couple of my students, and we would have a couple Ghanaians that were interested. I thought it was going to be like that. And very quickly I saw, no, there's like hundreds of people that want to come. And so that just scales up the cost. Another thing is that I did not realize that the Ghanaians were going to expect us to pay for the accommodation and feeding of 100 people for 1 week. But I should have thought of that because I was a Peace Corps volunteer living in Ghana, but I don't know everything. And the thing is, students who are on low budgets, they're going to want, they're not going to go to your school unless it's like, you provide housing and food for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so funding is a big challenge. You've got something on that. The other thing is finding partners, right? So we have these Ghanaian partners at 2 different institutions. You'll have to do the same thing in Madagascar. Do you already have someone in mind that you're going to work with?
Yeah, I have a colleague. He's from Madagascar, but he's in Europe right now. He's doing a postdoc there, and it was his idea to have the summer school because our ship is going to depart on that side and the project's there. So I wanted to do something for the region. And I asked him what he would like. And he said, oh, I would like it to have a summer school there. So he has contacted the university. And yeah, that's how that started.
Maybe another thing is, like I said, we did do a scouting trip and that was really useful. Ebenezer actually wasn't on that's the only major thing we did that he wasn't on, but that was really at the beginning, because you go there as a scouting trip and you just start meeting people and deciding, okay, what are we going to do? How many participants are we going to have? And they tell you things like, oh, did you think about the fact that you have to support accommodations and food? Oh no, I didn't think of that. So that's another one. And then I think another thing, once you get it going, I'm confident you will, and you've done it for a few years, then the thing is, how do you get grants for the next round? That's another challenge. But that's part of the Ocean Corps idea, like if we could convince someone, that we really need this, like put some serious money into this for 10 years, then all of us could just say, we'll apply for funds under that umbrella. Because I guess my view, maybe I'm very idealistic, former Peace Corps volunteer, but all the major UN decade programs, OASIS being one of them, and there's others, they all want to do capacity development. Everyone realizes it's important. And so capacity development is one of the major themes of the decade. So a program like Ocean Corps and others, we're not the only one, if we had support, we could help the entire decade, right? Everyone wants to have these kind of exchanges and more trained personnel. And
Yeah.
so it's needed for the whole decade. I think everyone can see that, So anyway, getting funding at the beginning, sustaining the funding, finding the right partners, those are all big challenges.
I'll
Maybe
bug you in the email.
What's that?
I'll bug you in the email if it's okay with you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. And Ebenezer, do you want to add anything? Challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Vivian, for the question. That was a great one. And yeah, Brian has said most of it. And one thing I would like to add also is for programs, global efforts, and programs such as OASIS, and also for what you are trying to do, I think we should have it at the back of our mind that we cannot have one program or one strategy for every place. You have to let it fit into the local culture and the people. So if you want to do a school in Madagascar, you have to get a strong collaboration, which looks like you're already doing, with a local person who will guide you through the process, because sometimes there will be some bureaucratic ways. And if you have a local person, it can help you navigate. Plus also there are local problems, so you want to build local solutions. A solution that will apply to one country may not fit to another. One of the things that we encountered with Brian also saw in Ghana, for example, Friday by 2:00 p.m., everybody is ready to go home or travel for funeral or weddings or whatever. So you have to consider all those things and sort of fit it into your program. So culture, you have to basically consider the culture of the people that you are going to be dealing with. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. That's fantastic. What a fantastic presentation, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Do send me an email, but I see there's some other questions in the chat. So.
Okay. Yeah. I want to add one thing, but I think I will leave for folks to talk first, and then probably I just want to share a story about Ghana, but that's because of the capacity building that is really interesting, and what you presented on Python and MATLAB and all this thanks. It's an interesting stuff. I would love to share one small thing, but I think I wait until the end. Maybe.
Okay, there was a comment from Adrian, if you want to speak out. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for those talks. They were really great. And I really like the concept of an ocean core or a STEM core. And there's also another comment in the chat kind of talking about how there are a number of trainings out there that, you know, different organizations are doing, like the Ocean Foundation. If you had Alexis participate, you're, you know, aware of the ocean acidification community's efforts. And yeah, so I just wonder what's the next step with trying to seek funding for that, or, you know, is there a idea of bringing those organizations together that are all doing those different trainings and try to put them under one umbrella and coordinate?
Yeah, I was thinking Ocean Core could be an umbrella. Of course, not everyone's going to want to be under one umbrella, but for those that are interested in, you know, it's certainly on the US side, when you use the word core and it's like a Peace Corps, people just get it immediately what you're talking about. And, you know, I mean, as far as funding, of course, that's the magic bullet. Where do you find that? You know, I know one possibility that I'll bet others on this call know about is that on the US side, they're looking over the ocean shots right now and trying to come up with themes. And so I've been in contact with a few of those committee members, you know, mentioning, don't forget, we've submitted this ocean core concept as an ocean shot. Also, you mentioned the Ocean Foundation. Caitlin from there is on this call. I can see that. And you know, Equisea, which is a program of that, I mentioned very briefly, but I did mention it. You know, I'm involved in that. Caitlin's involved in that. And Alexis has done her ocean acidification programs as part of the Ghana school. And yeah, we thought about, you know, melding several earth and ocean science summer schools. You know, I mentioned, you know, we're working with people who want to do sediment coring and add that to the school, and people who want to do weather. So I'm kind of looking for ways to, you know, combine, you know, expand the curriculum, go to more countries, find an umbrella, work with like-minded partners. The UN Decade already has a program called the Ocean Global Teacher Academy. We've talked a little bit to them as well. They do online trainings. I think one difference between them and what we're doing is, I could be wrong about this, but my sense is that they're doing a higher level. Like, we have a lot of undergrads in our summer school, and we do have grad students and professors, but I think the Teacher Academy is almost at like a real research level, like people who have a very specific research question. And we have some participants in our school are at that level, but some are younger. So maybe we could be a feeder for other programs as well. I hope this is a partial answer, you know, but I see time is running out. I don't know if 1 o'clock is a hard deadline, but
If you want to give me a chance, I can add a few things before.
Okay, quickly.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing that we're talking about capacity building and you know, capacity development within those countries, at least within Western Africa or specifically in Gulf of Guinea. And you know, I had the chance to do some work in there. I was called by basically my agency, NOAA, called me at some point in 2015 to do some work with fisheries management in there. But I had a chance to really look at the situation there with capacity building. And we in the room, we had a workshop. There is no modelers that you can talk to. So in term modeling of oceanography data or anything fisheries, it was like surprising to me. There is not much in there. And what is interesting for me when I went and did some investigation a little bit, there is University of Cape Coast, there is University of Ghana in one side and the other side, and in between them, there is an institute called AIMS Ghana. I mean, Ebenezer, you probably know that. AIMS basically prepare the brightest mathematical, you know, students coming from all over Africa. And there is no connection between University of Ghana or University of Cape Coast. Professor coming there and working together. And so that was something surprising. So I had to go to the director of AIMS and tell her to go to these universities and start, having those students working on the ocean side of things. So that's the thing I want to share with you guys. I mean, it's always sometimes it's there, but we cannot see it. And I think it's not to do with capacity building and development. I think that it's to do with empowerment. We need to think about empowering instead just capacity building, I know in Ghana, 60 years of capacity building, at least. And where is it? When you go there, there's no modeler you can talk about. I mean, in terms of ocean, work and stuff like that. So I think that's where I think that we have to move and think about a little bit empowerment instead of capacity. Sorry about this. My the experience there was that give me that kind of feeling that no, capacity is not the right thing anymore. What we need to empower these people, these students, and that to do that, you have really to connect to the right people.
Thank you so much. This has been a very exciting discussion, and I want this to continue within the OASIS theme team for capacity and partnership building. It seems like there's a lot of different activities that are out there, and that if we can provide glue and connections between these groups, that we could really accelerate and empower lots of different efforts, and especially working within the UN Ocean Decade framework. So let's stay tuned. And thank you so much, Ebenezer and Brian, for giving this webinar.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And the decade has just started, so we have time to do more.
Okay.
Thanks for having us, and good to see you all. Hi, Adrian.
Very good to see you.
Again. Bye.
All right, thank you.